Hey y'all, and welcome back to my channel. In this tutorial, we're going to make this double glitter peekaboo tumbler inspired by Vanessa Davis at VMD Designs. Not only is Vanessa a very talented artist, I am obsessed with all of her work and all of her layering techniques with her designs, but she also mixed this there are no words for it. It's a perfect pack of 5 beautiful glitters for PDB Creative Studio. If you have watched her tutorials before, you know that she does mix lots of glitters to make her own custom colors in her tutorials. So I was really excited to see that she was doing another pack collab with PDB Creative Studio. There are a couple ways to get your hands on these glitters. The first 2 ways are at a discounted price, and that is to be part of the subscription list with PDB Creative Studio or grab them whenever they are released on their page. The third way is to get them when they release individually on the PDB Creative Studio website. And at that time, you can still use code BBS21 to save $5 off your order of $20 or more. And of course, that code can be used at any time. Let's get started making this tumbler. So we are using a 24-ounce plump from the Steel Magnolia, and I've had a couple of questions about the little attachment that I screw into my tumblers. Those are from the Steel Magnolia, and I will have them linked down below as well. I have obviously, since I've used them in all of my tutorials since I got them in the mail, really started loving these because you twist them into your tumblers and it stays. They don't come undone. They're not going to fall off of the foam, and it keeps my tumbler really nice and straight on my turner. So if you don't have some, grab some because they are awesome. So since we are using gold and silver glitters, I'm not going to base paint this tumbler. I just prepped it with my Artistry's Mattify, and then I went in with the Artistry glitter glue. And I don't know about y'all, but I am horrible of cleaning my makeup brushes off that I use to apply my glue and paint. So I have $3 paint brushes laying around or in the trash can that have just dried up with glue on them. So I grabbed my cheap bristle paintbrush, like the 98-cent ones that you can get from Walmart or the hardware store, and much to my surprise, it really applied the glitter glue well. So I will definitely be using that to apply my glitter glue to all of my tumblers. One, to save myself some dough because I am not responsible. I mean, I'll just be honest with y'all. And 2, it works really well. So win-win, right? For our base, we are using Times Square, Snowfall, and Winter Solstice. I just very lightly sprinkled these around until I got the full coverage that I wanted. Oh my gosh, this glitter is so beautiful. So I just rolled it on my sheet of paper to flatten out that glitter. I gave this one really good coat of epoxy, sanded it, and then I grabbed my snowflakes that I have used in a ton of my winter tutorials, and I finally used a stencil vinyl. I did not like the Cricut brand stencil vinyl. I actually wasted a whole roll of it and ended up in the trash. But the Paper Studio stencil vinyl actually did pretty well as long as it is larger images or thicker lines. So we have used this snowflake stencil on a couple other tumblers, and I have showed you how to create a stencil by adding in a shape the same size as your tumbler and then taking these images, overlaying them on the shape, and just laying them out so you can map out your stencil. If you need a detailed description on how to create a stencil template, then check out the Holiday Floral Peekaboo tumbler tutorial. It's a really bright pink tumbler, really festive, and I go through very detailed and show you how I lay these out in Design Space. So once I have weeded out all that negative space, I'm going to place over my transfer tape so we can add it to our tumbler. Now the only thing I wish was different with this stencil vinyl is the color. I mean, it definitely needs to be darker, brighter, I don't know, make it neon because I am blind as a bat and it was really hard for me to see the stencil vinyl. So I did put it on hella crooked and I had to trim off one of my snowflakes, but everything else lined up pretty decent. So I removed the transfer tape and then we just added on that other snowflake. Since we are doing a double glitter peekaboo, it is okay that our tumbler is sanded and not necessarily level in all spots. A couple of little imperfections in that base is perfectly fine, especially when going over with another glitter. Now, if you were going over with an extra fine glitter, you would definitely want to give this tumbler another coat of epoxy before going into this step, so those imperfections do not show under that fine glitter. Also, if you are doing a spray paint peekaboo, then you want to have a smooth surface as well. Once you have your stencil on, definitely go back and check, especially if you are using the stencil vinyl, and make sure everything is laid flat. I went over with Blackout from Color Shot, just really lightly. I didn't want a really dark coat, I just wanted it dark enough to hide some of that brightness from our gold and silvers. And then I went in with a glue gun. This is a really important step. Went in with a glue gun and just went over some areas on my snowflakes. If you do not do this, you will completely lose all of your stencils once you add on your glitter. Make sure you are quick with this and you don't sort of press down with your glue gun. It will go through your vinyl because the vinyl will melt under the tip of the glue gun. Speaking from experience there, y'all, so just make sure that you are sort of quick with this. Don't worry about all those little stringy lines. You can remove those once it has dried. After you get all your little dots on there, just go through and sort of rub your fingers over those little stringy lines and remove them. A couple that is close to the little dots is fine. You just don't want anything to come loose and get underneath your glue or epoxy when you are applying it. So Vanessa usually uses a fast set epoxy to do her double glitter peekaboos. I knew for a fact I would make a hot mess out of trying to remove my stencils from a wet epoxy. So I tried to brainstorm what glue have I used in the past for a peekaboo that I could successfully remove my stencil without removing any of that glue and glitter or mica, whatever I had worked on, and I thought about Tack-It. Tack-It has always come off with clean lines and smooth when I used it to apply my micas on top of it for a peekaboo. I believe I used it, the last one I used it on was my Spooky Witch tumbler. And since I'm using it for a glitter application rather than Tack-It method per se, I'm going to put this on a little bit thicker, and I went all over and dabbed with the end of my paintbrush just to get rid of some of those clumps around my little dots that we did with our glue gun. I didn't want this to dry because I wanted to apply the glitter and it really stick to it, so I just went all around, dabbed the tumbler to get a little bit of texture to it and remove some of those clumps around the dots, and then dumped our glitter on before it dried. And this glitter is Winter's Night. This is a 0.015 cut. When you are doing a double glitter peekaboo, you definitely want to use the smaller cuts of glitter. I would say probably 0.015 or lower, just so it is easier to see and remove your stencils. And when you remove your stencils, you're not moving up chunky pieces of glitter. It stuck to the tacket really, really well, and I allowed that to dry completely and then went over with 2 good coats of Color Shot Matte Clear Sealer. I allowed that to dry, and once I get this piece pulled up, look at how clean those lines are. If you remake this, I definitely suggest using the stencil vinyl since it doesn't have very much stickiness to it at all. It will be a lot easier to remove than a temporary vinyl. This come off so well, and I was so excited to see that the lines were so clean around our snowflakes. I had actually planned on doing offsets on them, but once I started seeing how beautiful these looked without the offset, I decided not to do that. And the great thing is since we were able to seal these in before removing our stencils, we do not have to seal it again. Once those stencils are removed, we can go directly into epoxy. So after I applied that first layer of epoxy, and I did make this sort of a thinner layer so that we can apply some glitter on top of it, I grabbed Gilded, and I just took this and sprinkled it around the top and the bottom of the tumbler and held my tumbler at a little bit of an angle to allow that glitter to fall down towards the center. We didn't add a tremendous amount of this one because it is a beautiful glitter, and just a little sprinkle here and there really changed up the look of this tumbler and added tons of extra sparkle. I grabbed this winter solstice bundle from Etsy, and this one was a Dropbox file. I cannot stand the Dropbox file because I cannot see the pictures and I have to just go through everything and click on it. But I did want to show you which ones I used. So if you use the same file, it would be easier for you to quickly find and download these. So the first one was the square winter cabin scene, and the second was the floral arrangement. We brought those both over into Design Space, and I'm going to take my little cabin scene and resize that to a little bit bigger than 3.5 inches. So you can do like 3.55, just so it is large enough to put a 3.5 inch circle in the center. And we're going to highlight both of them and select Slice. And this is going to create a circle scene for us to use underneath our offset. Now, I did record the making the offset, but for whatever reason, I cannot find that footage. So how I did that was I added in a 3.5 inch circle shape. I then created a 0.045 offset to that circle, highlighted them both and selected Slice, and that gave me the outline. And then I took that same outline, duplicated it, and just moved those circles around to make it a little wispy. And then attached all of those together, or welded them together so it would cut as one image. I added in my little florals, and I also added in a shape the same size as my tumbler dimensions so that I could lay these out and make sure I don't make them too large. I feel, make them a little too small. I didn't want to take away from that beautiful double peekaboo we had going on with our snowflakes, so I made them a little bit smaller with intentions of sort of framing out that main image. So I would definitely make them a little bit bigger than what I do here by about 1/2 inch or maybe even to 1 inch, so that it really wraps around the side of the tumbler, and I don't think it will take away from that peekaboo at all. So funny story, I did print these on the Buttercraft printable vinyl. It just so happened to be my last sheet, and I printed them backwards and I cut them backwards, so it completely ruined my very last sheet of Buttercraft vinyl. I don't know how Brittany Barnes runs out of printable vinyl, but we did. So I did not have any white regular water slide. However, I did have some of that no seal water slide that we used in one of the prior tutorials. So I grabbed that, crossed my fingers, and hoped that it worked. I do really like this water slide paper because it is a little bit thicker and it has a matte paper-like finish to it, very similar to the printable vinyl. However, I do not, like 10 out of 10, do not recommend using water slide for floral clusters. It is a hot mess, and you will see how much I struggle putting those florals on this tumbler. We did get it, so it is a good last resort if you do not have any printable vinyl. And this water slide does say no seal. However, if you do not at least give it a very, very thin coat, you do not have to give it multiple coats like a regular water slide, okay? But you do need to give it a very light coat of a matte spray paint, especially before using it, just so it eliminates my water slide. The tumbler that we did a full wrap down below. So how I worked with this water slide, absolutely recommend test out this water slide instead of submerging it. Turned out beautiful, really well from the back, did not run or anything like that. However, we did get those pieces as it was removing itself from that back, using a vinyl weeding pen, and then I removed those sides and very gently pulled it off the backing. You can't slide it off because of all of the details. They will detach from the rest of the water slide. So I just tried to very gently pull the water slide up so that I could spray it again with the water, spray the tumbler so it would slide around on the tumbler really well, get it in position, and then I dried it off just by dabbing a cloth on top of it.